Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of AdvoChats. I am Thilini Bandara, Research Analyst from Advocata Institute. I am joining with Mr. Erandika Dissanayake today, who is a National Project Coordinator of International Labour Organization Country Office for Sri Lanka and Maldives. So today we'll be discussing about promoting youth entrepreneurship in Sri Lankan context. Under this topic, we will be discussing the importance of promoting youth entrepreneurship, how youth entrepreneurship can shape the Sri Lankan economy, challenges and opportunities in promoting youth entrepreneurship, and finally, the way forward. Welcome to the discussion, Mr. Erandika. Hello, good evening.
Hi. Good evening, Mr.
Yeah.
Fadi.
Okay. First of all, I would like to start our discussion with the importance of promoting youth entrepreneurship in Sri Lankan economy. Since right now, as we all know, that Sri Lanka is slowly recovering from its economic stability, so promoting youth entrepreneurship can have numerous positive impacts on country's overall development strategy by reducing youth employment rates, increasing job creation, poverty reduction, economic diversification, and also enhancing global competitiveness. So, how would you perceive the implications of promoting youth entrepreneurship on the country's overall development strategy amidst the current recovery situation? Over to you, Mr. Ravi.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rindi, and thank you, Advocata, for giving this opportunity to share a few thoughts about youth entrepreneurship. Actually, this is the very high time for us to tell you about what we are doing as a ILO also into the area of youth entrepreneurship development right now. And let me begin with sharing a few ideas and thoughts about the current context itself. It is not just limiting to Sri Lankan context. Let me share some broader perspective as well. We all know that with the COVID pandemic, the entire world suffered a lot. And Sri Lanka especially, we had experienced a severe difficulty within the COVID period. But even before the COVID, Sri Lanka was not doing very good. Actually, we had a very slow economic growth, a weak fiscal position, and as well as we were building our external debts so much. So we were not in a kind of sustainable economic condition even before the COVID pandemic. With the pandemic, we had to focus into several other areas, like government had to focus on public health and social well-being. So a lot of investment had to take place on that. And we lost a significant proportion of export revenue, foreign remittance from migrant workers, as well as domestic production was depriving. So with all these things, country's economy was not that good. It was a double hit, I would say. So with this macroeconomic fallout, what happened was, as well as there was a kind of severe shortage of essential commodities, we know gas, fuel, electricity, so on and so forth. It created a kind of social unrest as well, and leading towards a kind of structural default declared by the government in April 2022. So with all this, what has happened? Country is, as you said, we are looking for in a desperate way to recover, or sometimes we call it build back. To build back, we need to have a kind of very different strategy. I would say we need to have very disruptive innovation and creative thinking. That is very essential. The usual way of thinking about the country's context or development paradigm shifting and everything, it is not valid anymore. We have to make a kind of total change. And also we have to have more adaptability and agility also. We cannot have very consistent things. We have to cater to the changing scenarios. We have to adapt to the situations. As well as we have to keep our persistence and commitment. Of course, Sri Lankan community is very much known as a very persistent community, but that persistence should be there for the economic growth as well, and commitment should be there. And we have to take risk also. Without taking risk, country cannot proceed beyond. If we are looking for our comfort zone more, it is not the way to seek a kind of recovery, immediate recovery. And persuasion and networking is also essential. So I told you several things. What are these? If I am to say, these are all essential traits of entrepreneurship. Innovation, creativity, adaptability, agility, commitment, persistence, self-reliance, risk-taking, persuasion, networking, all these are entrepreneurship traits. So without these traits, we can't move forward as a country. So who can have these traits? Is it the generation that we were there? I think it is the generation of your nation, Tarindi. So it is the generation, the youth generation, who can take forward this thing. So you need to have these essential entrepreneurship skills and look for future. And as youth, you have the potential, energy, drive, so you can take the lead. And what you are lacking, or the youth are lacking, is especially, we used to say, they are lacking of direction and vision. So what we need to do is give them a direction, give them the drive, give them the motivation, so they can take it forward. Over.
Mentioned Mr. Erandika, there's a huge potential for youth entrepreneurs to like drive the economy right now. So as you very correctly mentioned, like the promoting youth entrepreneurship can often bring energy, creativity, and also dynamic approach for the economic development of the country as well. So by supporting and empowering young entrepreneurs, Sri Lanka can harness their potential to drive job creation, sustainable economic growth, and many more. So if we dig in deep into how youth entrepreneurship can shape the Sri Lankan economy, so there are many ways. One is like innovation and creativity, as you mentioned as early as well. So we can like encourage youth entrepreneurs and that get their help to transition Sri Lankan economy towards a more culture of innovation and creativity. So I would like to know your aspects on the readiness of young entrepreneurs to like take up these innovative aspects in terms of product developments, new process developments, and all. How would you see those aspects in the current context?
Yeah, yes, Tarindra, that's a very good question. Actually, the innovation and creativity is one area we are lagging behind so much as a country. Because we, as a country in this region, with all the natural resources and all the support from, we are culturally more developed, I would say, so that we have our family support. So our young generations, even the elder generations, they don't need to try out several things because they are taken care of environmentally as well as socially, I would say. So need of looking for more opportunities or search for new ways is very much lacking with us culturally, I would say. So this is where the country is very much lacking of investment into R&D, even research and development perspective. We don't have much investment other than only a very few sectors like telecommunication, banking, so on and so forth. Because those industries, they cannot survive without having a reasonable investment into research and development because they have to face with the global trends. So, but the other sectors, they are very much lagging behind. And even in those sectors that we have a kind of reasonable investment into R&D, more often we are the change takers. We are not change makers. If I'm to tell you a bit about with the numbers also, in Sri Lankan context, out of the total workforce, we have 2.1 million in agriculture sector alone, whereas service sector has 3.7 million workforce, and industry sector around 2 million workforce is there. But when you are comparing the GDP share, if I would tell you, the service sector alone contributes to more than 56% of the GDP, whereas whereas the agriculture sector is much less than, even less than the 10%. So industrial sector, where do they have this innovation and novel things coming in? They don't have the technology coming in. So these are the areas where we need to have more of industry engaging in research and innovation, and they need to have more of investment for R&D.
Okay, yeah. Also, as you very correctly mentioned, research and development is moreover like linked with the technology. You mean like technology adoption of the entrepreneurs also important aspect if you are talking about this promoting youth entrepreneurship. So there are a lot of tech-driven startups right now in Sri Lanka, which are driven by youth entrepreneurs. So how would you perceive these aspects? How is the readiness of entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, towards technology adoption? So how would you perceive that aspect, like in the industry?
Very good question, Parindi. Actually, when we are talking about the tech-based industries, naturally our focus goes to the ICT sector. Actually, technology is not always the ICT sector or computer-based industries. Technology is everywhere and anywhere. It is simply applying the scientific approach and scientific know-how to practical work. So technology is everywhere. So what we need is adapting the technology to whatever the industries we have. As you correctly said, we have so much of young persons engaged in tech-based industries, but they are very focused into a limited scope. We don't have much of young persons engaging in agriculture sector. We don't have much of persons engaging in banking sector. We don't have much of people engaging in public sector innovation, I would say, which is very much lacking in new technology, novel ideas. Almost nothing is coming up. But as a country, we have a very high expectation. Like we want to have the universal access to technology and digitalization. So much of discussions being taken place. And we want to transform our industries into sustainable production. Where do we have those things? And we want to keep our food, medicine, and all those commodity sustainable way in the production supply. And we need to make our transport and other energy sectors to make them more cleaner and greener. So much of expectations are there. But what we are looking at is there are, I don't say that we don't have anyone engaging in these sectors bringing new technology or new ideas. Yes, we do have, but scalability is a question. We do have even young persons starting businesses into green technology, green economy, but the amount of expansion they are having is very much lacking. This is the area where we need to have a much higher focus and support for them also to grow.
Yeah, that makes sense actually. Also, with that adoption, I guess like the skills development of entrepreneurs also much important in the current scenario, because like entrepreneurship can offer a platform for young individuals to develop their diverse set of skills, like including leadership skills, problem solving skills, communication, and critical thinking aspects. So those can be actually use them to leverage their companies, their businesses, and drive the economy. So what do you think about the skills, set of skills that they are having right now, and is that enough for them to drive the economy? And yeah, what are your aspects on those things?
Yeah, actually, as I mentioned earlier, we are very much culturally trained, and even in our education system, we are not groomed to think different. And that creativity is very much lacking in our education system. So we need to have the creativity first, and we need to identify the problems second. What kind of problems available are around us? We need to identify them. Then only we can have solutions. Fine. Because otherwise, our next generation would also do the same thing, that blaming at the others because of their suffering, because of the other people's fault, likewise. So it is not the way it should be. They should have the creativity, different way of thinking. Then they need to identify the problems. They need to find solutions. Next thing, as you correctly mentioned, leadership. If you find a solution for a problem, a social problem, or even a kind of business problem, you need to have the leadership to take that drive forward. You need to be able to convince others, persuade. You need to have more of communication skills for that, as well as you need to have more of agility, adaptability, as I mentioned earlier also, because scenarios might change, things can change. We never thought that COVID would come, and most of us didn't expect a kind of economic crisis to follow. So we don't know what would happen in next year or even next month. So much of adaptability should be there with the young person. So these are the key areas I would suggest for young persons to develop, as well as you need to develop more transformative skills, I would say. You need to have technical skills. Yes, of course. If you are looking for one particular industry, one particular business for you to start, say for instance, if you are into agriculture business, maybe you need to have more technical skills. Yes, but you can't sustain with that technical skill alone. You need to know about IT. You need to know about communication. You need to know about several other things. So you need to get more diverse skills, as well as in sometimes you might have to change your direction, change your business. Diversification is a kind of strategic approach in businesses. So for you to diversify, you need to have more skills. That is where what we call as the transformative skills coming in.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you have mentioned, like the importance of having a diversified skill set of entrepreneurs for them to like drive their businesses, and also to face uncertainties, and like how to face those uncertainties with much kind of a restrictive way. Moving towards the other aspect, which is the diversity and inclusion. So I personally believe that entrepreneurship, empowering youth entrepreneurs can like can encourage specifically the women and also the marginalized groups in the society, because right now most of the people in Sri Lanka is live below the poverty line. So entrepreneurship can pave the way for them to like get rid of the poverty. So what do you think about this aspect? Over to you.
Good question again. Actually, I would say marginalization doesn't happen just because of the gender or the disability or a factor just pursued by people. It happens the way you think of yourself as well. Society might deprive you of opportunities just simply because of you are a female or a disabled person or coming from a marginalized community. But if you accept that, that creates the discrimination itself. If you don't accept and fight for your rights, if you look for opportunities, I would say in Sri Lanka and globally, you have enough opportunities. You can find the access. That is the first message I want to say. Because classically, conventionally, we often say there are multiple dimensions of discrimination, disability, and we are talking about the inclusion. Yes, inclusion is a must. As a society, inclusion is a must. But mere inclusion won't serve anything even. Because, say for instance, in Sri Lankan banking sector, with the support of central banks, policy directives, there are so much of loan facilities and financial facilities provided for females. How many of them are taking those advantage? How many of them are aware of those opportunities? That is the question. Because we can have more of inclusive strategies, inclusion. but people need to know. People should come and get it. This is where I often say, you can't sleep over your rights. You have to get it. That is where entrepreneurship come in. Entrepreneur is a person who just, without letting the problem create a kind of sufferance for that person, he creates an opportunity for him. He look for the solution. So problem solver is an entrepreneur. Without looking at the solution, you can't go beyond. But having said that, as a country, I must say, we still have some regional disparities as well as cultural difficulties for some females to acquire properties, and even in when it comes to business registration, sometimes if you have a family business, the business registration happens only with the husband's name. It doesn't make a kind of co-ownership. Likewise, so culturally there are certain factors affecting the females. Likewise for the PWDs or disabled persons, as well as the regionally deprived communities. So strategies we need to identify and mobilize. That is where all this development community and other partners are coming in. I would say even ILO and other agencies are coming in and advocating the government even to support, as well as it is not just advocating, we are providing support for the government institutions to look into these areas, identify where the lacking places, and we support them to develop new policies as well as strategies to mobilize our resources, the development resources, so that these communities will be looked after and supported. Even in entrepreneurship, as I said, they need to have more technology. Access to technology is a must. Access to knowledge, new knowledge is a must. Access to finance is a must. So these are the main areas I would say the support needed.
Yeah, I do agree with what you have mentioned about access to capital, access to finance. Those are much needed when it comes to entrepreneurship and utilizing it for the best thing of the country, best approach for the country. So moving onwards, since you are a national coordinator for the entrepreneurship side in Sri Lankan context, representing ILO, so you might have involved in a lot of programs advocating for this entrepreneurship side. So what are the challenges that you have faced in terms of when promoting youth entrepreneurship? What are the challenges that you and also the relevant stakeholders have to face in terms of promoting the youth entrepreneurship? Over to you.
Okay, thank you for raising that question so that it is much easier for me to promote my work also. Actually, as ILO, we recognize the need of supporting young persons to think entrepreneurship as a better career choice. Because culturally, it is not just in Sri Lanka, actually in South Asian region, we find this as a kind of common incidence where young persons look for either public sector job or private sector wage employment as secured income, source of income, I would say. Job security is number one for most of the young persons when they are looking for a kind of economic activity. Whereas the businesses or starting of own business is considered as a high risk thing. This is one area where we wanted to change the mindset of young persons. It is not just young persons' mindset, actually, they are influenced by many others, including their parents, teachers, principals, and their peers even, and almost all social players, they make these people discourage of selecting entrepreneurship as a kind of better career choice for them. This is where we started one project that we call as SAIL, or South Asia Leadership in Entrepreneurship. We started this project in Sri Lanka and Nepal on a pilot basis 2 years back, actually. Within this project, we have several things. I would say, starting from knowledge creation. Even before we make the awareness creation, we make young persons aware of the current context, what problems you are facing. And if I'm to share with you how many employment being created in the country is not enough, at least to cater to 1/10 of our new entrance to the labor market now. Globally, even it is almost the same context. New job creation is very much lagging behind. So you can't expect a job if you are to come into the labor market without a very specific leading skill. If you are not having such a skill, you will be unemployed for a longer period, and sometimes you become economically inactive even. So awareness creation we do through our project. Then skills development, entrepreneurial skills development, we provide them. After providing skills development, we create a culture. Especially we have our project in schools, targeting the young persons from age of 15 to 24. We mobilize this project. So we have more of young students, school students. So we create entrepreneurship clubs within schools so that they have a kind of conducive environment for them to try out. Then confidence building happens, and we support them to promote, try with their innovation product, and also to commercialize it. Because as a country, we have some of innovation coming up, and we find several patent rights have been taken place. Several people are applying for patents, and patents are taken, but they cannot commercialize the product. That is one area where we are very much lacking. So this is what we are supporting them. And also we are supporting them to think of not just profit and losses, to think of opportunity cost, to think of return on investment in multidimensional way, not just financial manner, environmental manner, social manner as well. So these social capital dimensions, we are giving them more of awareness. So it is a kind of comprehensive transformation we are looking for these young persons through our project, and we are to have a kind of competition coming up with those who had came up with their business ideas, proposals, and we groom them. And next Monday we will be having our the entrepreneurship competition, what we call as Spark, the Youth Entrepreneurship competition. The final grand finale will take place on Monday to celebrate the products that we have developed already.
Yeah, that's actually happy to hear such initiatives made by ILO regarding promoting youth entrepreneurship in Sri Lankan context. Also, Mr. Erandika, there's a question in our audience, from our audience. It's about like when it comes to promoting entrepreneurship, especially for youth, how would it mainstream into the Sri Lankan context? So how that can be done into the mainstreaming into the Sri Lankan policies and strategies in various sectors?
In a way, it's a kind of difficult question for me to answer, because before joining ILO, I was a public servant for 25 years, and I have enough experience in handling actually starting from formulating national policies into human resource development and coordinating those, and advocating to change of certain policies. So with my past experience and with the experience in ILO even, developing policies is a kind of critical problem in Sri Lanka. We do have much of policies, but implementation is a crisis with us. The question you raise is mainstreaming the entrepreneurship in national policies. Having said all these constraints in policy development and also policy implementation, I would say without mainstreaming entrepreneurship, none of the policies can sustain. If I'm to say our environmental policies, just imposing laws won't serve anything. We need to identify the problems. We need to identify solution. We need to think of new ways, find new solutions, new approaches. All these things coming up with the entrepreneurship. So even for environmental laws or environmental policies in country, maritime policies maybe, logistic policies, maybe transport policies, even national security policy. We have to have the entrepreneurial thinking. It's not just for, I would say, entrepreneurship, there's a misconception that entrepreneurship is doing business. It is not. Everybody should have entrepreneurship. Even public servants should have entrepreneurship. What we call as intrapreneurship. Entrepreneurship within an organization should be there. And even at a family, you need to have a kind of, it is not to make profit, but to make a social benefit, what we call as social capital. You need not have to have a kind of financial gain per se by having a kind of business. That is where we have this social entrepreneurship coming in, where we look at not just profit, people and planet as well. So, I would say for any policy in a country, entrepreneurship should be there, should be very embedded within. And coming to the youth policy especially, actually now we are having the next phase of youth policy development. Youth policy is drafted very recently and it is at the validation stage now. This is the area where we are very much keen on supporting the government to include more of entrepreneurship perspectives into the national youth policy as well. Because without entrepreneurship, we cannot sustain, I would say. Oh.
Oh, sorry. Also, I would prefer to add for more about the points to this section as well, like mainstreaming the entrepreneurship. So mainstreaming entrepreneurship across various sectors, as you very correctly mentioned, that also I believe that requires a multi-stakeholder approach. For instance, like more coordinated and collaborative efforts should be made by government agencies, chambers, cooperatives, educational institutions, NGOs, INGOs, CSOs, and also entrepreneurial community. So how do you perceive this aspect? Like, are those actors, are those stakeholders have enough readiness towards this action? So what are your thoughts on this aspect also?
Okay, let me come in with certain dimensions where we need to have more pragmatic policies, I would say. Then we can look where these social players or development partners can come in. Say, for instance, education. As a country, with the very recent reports, education has a critical impact now with the past COVID pandemic and economic crisis. It was suffering a lot. And education attainment is very much low in primary grade students as well as the other students. So, can the government or our educational sector bridge these gaps? This is one area where the development partners can come in. It is not just to support the government or not just to support the, I would say, the institutions who are playing in. I would say these development partners, including ILO, I would say, we should bring new solutions to this. I'm not suggesting to privatize the education, but there can be alternatives. There can be more of solutions where education sector can be supported more. And these gaps should be bridged very soon. Otherwise, these students' educational attainment will be suffering more and more when they are proceeding with the higher grades. Skills development is a very must, but in Sri Lanka and context, the vocational education sector is very much suffering. The traditional education, vocational education sector needs a paradigm shift. This is where the entrepreneurship should come in. Government sector alone cannot play. So as you said, the private-public partnership should come in. It is not for making profit, but to make a kind of capital, social capital, I would say. And if I'm to think of information technology, or finance side, banking and finance side, insurance field. Country needs more of innovative approaches. What we are right now doing is we are just supporting the existing entities, existing bodies, and trying out to capacitate them. It should not be the way to do. There should be new things, new thinking should come in. I think development partners, we have to think of different ways. And let me share one recent finding. And actually, ILO did a study onto the multiple crises happening in Sri Lanka, and we suggested several policy development or policy interventions ranging to short term, medium term, to long term, where we advocated to have a kind of fiscal consolidation and debt restructuring. It is happening. Yes, it is a kind of government work. But restore investor confidence. It cannot be done by the government alone. There should be private sector coming in. There should be other players coming in. This is areas where more entrepreneurial thinking should come in. This is one area where development partners can fit in, support. And export-led growth, we are promoting technological transformation and productivity improvement. This increase in research and development, as I mentioned earlier, and demand-driven skills perspective, as well as promoting social dialogue and social inclusion and social protection. We are still relying on government, the pension schemes for the private sector, EPF and ETF, for the disabled and other marginalized communities, social security systems. We are still relying on government. It cannot be the way. There should be some other alternative, new, innovative methods to look for solutions for these things. These are the areas where we need to support not just to government, but also to the other whole ecosystem players, private sector, and so I would say CSOs, social service organizations, community-based organizations, and several other partners should be supported to look for better opportunities, better ways to solve these problems without just relying on the government.
Yeah, that's very correct. I would like to know the next thing was like how the possible approaches, what sort of possible approaches that we can use to promote youth entrepreneurship. So as per my perspective, I would like suggest like initiating public-private partnerships, as you also very correctly mentioned in the previous dialogues, and also networking and collaboration, enhancing global competitiveness of youth entrepreneurship by connecting them with multinational and transnational companies and to collaborate on new ventures and many more. So what are your views on like possible approaches that we can utilize to promote youth entrepreneurship in Sri Lanka?
Okay, let me come up with a different way to approach this question, to answer this. We have enough problems in the world now. If I'm to tell you a few, if time permits, of course, 1 in 10 people worldwide are suffering from hunger. I'm taking this from SDG reports, the very recent SDG reports. 1 in 10 people are suffering, that is 10% of people are suffering from hunger. 1 billion people are living in slums without proper income, education, or health facilities. 1 million people are forcibly displaced. And coming to the environmental perspective, 99% of world urban population breathes polluted water, polluted air. And 3 billion people have the water sources where the quality is unknown. And food waste is a very severe crisis. 13% of world's food are wasted after harvesting and before coming to the market. And 17% of food are wasted at the consumer level. And 17 million metric tons of plastics are coming to the ocean every year, and 10 million hectares of forest are destroyed every year. These are global problems. I would say these are the global opportunities as well. If young persons are looking for problems to solve, we have enough problems in the world. Within the country, even we have enough problems. Globally, we have more of problems. So my advice for young persons to first to think at global level. We are global, more globalized. We have to think as global citizens now, without just limiting ourselves into a country alone. So we have to think of global problems, find solutions for global issues. Then we can have more entrepreneurial opportunities, I would say. That is first thing. That awareness should be created for young persons. Then they should be made capable of looking for. For that, they need to give the access to information. Knowledge creation is a must. Skill development is a must. Technology is a must. Then they should be given the confidence. I am repeating again these things because these are the most essential things. Should be. Without confidence, how much knowledge you have, it doesn't make any sense. You should be confident of yourself to try out something new. And also, culturally, we are not celebrating our mistakes. This should be changed. If somebody fails an exam, that is the end of life. Am I correct? So this should be changed. This mindset should be changed. The social paradigm should be there. A shift should be there. And as I mentioned earlier, innovation as well as commercialization. Just innovation won't serve anything if you cannot commercialize that product. Because we find more. I've been to several universities very recently, several schools with our training programs. What we experience is many students innovate something. They say they have innovated something, but it has been done by several other people. They're just reproducing. It is not innovation in one sense. And the other thing is, though they innovate new things, they don't know how to market it, how to price it, how to commercialize it. So that is the other thing. Then, after having all these things, they should be given the ability to start production. For that, they need to have infrastructure, technology, finance, and other supports like mentors, and as well as access to market. This is very key. If our young persons are doing some production, not just for local market, as I mentioned, we are looking at global problems. There should be a kind of way for them to access to the global markets. In ICT sector, now the barriers are very much low, so our young people are going beyond our boundaries. So they do business globally, but for many other products, still barriers are there. So this is where more support should come for them to access new markets. And they should be given that they are taken care of. If that kind of confidence is given, they will start. And one more thing I would say, just having one business alone won't serve you for a long time. So there should be growth as well as you should be prepared for change. So as I mentioned earlier, you should be capable of make the change. You should have more transitional skills as well as transformational skills for you to change your direction as well. So diversification is a must.
Yeah, that's very true in terms of like when encourage, as you very correctly mentioned, like while encouraging innovation developments, there should be a space for them to like market their products and commercialization aspects. Also, there's a few more questions made by our audience. So if I ask one of the question made by one of our listeners, one is like, what are the strategies that we can put forward to attract youth into the agriculture sector in Sri Lanka? So what sort of things that you can suggest in this aspect?
This is a very severe crisis in Sri Lanka. Though I said more than 2 million are already engaged in agriculture sector, we don't find much of young persons there. If we take tea industry or any other agricultural product, even to paddy, we don't find much of young persons engaged. Why is that? Because those are not industrialized. Though we call them sometimes agri-industries, they are not industrialized really. Then why these young persons should come into that kind of sector? There's no motivation for them. And as we all experience, right, even now, we are very much subsidized. Our agriculture sector is very much subsidized. And we rely on others' support. As I mentioned, this is not the kind of business model we are having in agriculture sector. So why should young persons take an unnecessary risk, putting themselves into a kind of unsustainable sector? If we are to bring young persons into agriculture sector, the sector should be sustainable first. How to bring the sustainability into sector? Again, young persons should come in. This is a kind of chicken and egg question. Young persons should look for opportunities to make the sector sustainable, make the sector more technologically driven, and make the sector more profit oriented, without relying on subsidies, without relying on government support, without relying on water, or without relying on any other support to come. They should find the ways. We are living in an island, but we don't use the saline water. Desalination is not something we are doing anymore. But look for Saudi Arabia or any other countries. The deserted countries, they plant plants. They have enough plantations. Where do they get the water? So agriculture sector needs so much of innovation, I would say. That innovation can be brought in by the young persons. So I would say it is not that we need to have strategies to bring young persons into agriculture sector. We have to encourage them to come into agriculture sector and change the sector itself. Then they will find more opportunities in this scenario itself. Because as I said, we have enough global problems. That problem itself creates an opportunity. If agriculture sector has enough problems, it is the opportunity for the young persons to look for, I would say.
Yeah, that makes very sense, Mr. Erandika. Also, there's one more question made by our audience, but that is bit deviate from our discussion. So, how can the labor policies in Sri Lanka adapt to meet the global workforce of the future?
We are experiencing a kind of severe brain drain right now. So much of skilled workforce are migrating. And if somebody would ask whether they are moving to the other countries to look for employment opportunities that are mapped with their skills, I would say no. Because at this very moment, people are very desperate. So they are looking for some other, whatever the opportunity they can get, just to leave the country. It is not merely because of the income they are getting out of the employment. They are not going for a kind of additional income source. The migration happens not just for that purpose. There are many multiple factors, right? So if we are to make our workforce globally compatible or competitive, we need to understand where the globally skills are and what skills we are lacking of. Without that comparison, we cannot make our workforce globally compatible or competitive. For that, I would say it is not the policies that we need, but we need action. As I mentioned earlier also, we have enough policies. We are a nice nation to develop nice policies. Problem is where the implementation, right? So I would suggest we must focus different strategies to send the right people for the right work. Skills should be mapped with right work. That is one thing. Second thing, we should ensure safe migration passages. If somebody is looking for migration, there are multiple opportunities, illicit trafficking and several things are there. So we have to educate people, we have to take measures. That is one area where policies can come in actually. But even beyond policies, we need action, more of actions to safeguard people when they are looking for migration option. That is second thing. Third thing, migration in person is not the phenomenon right now globally. We call the new phenomenon as virtual migration. You don't travel by person. You send your skill virtually. So are we ready as a nation, as a country, to promote more virtual migration? That is one question I have. We need to have not policies. I again say, not policies, please. Virtual migration, we can say somebody here and somebody can start developing a policy for virtual migration. I would say no. What we need is strategies, action. That can make our people safe living here while serving to the globe world and earning as a kind of global citizen. My fancy word I often use, global citizen. So migration should be one element in skills development. Second element is domestic workforce. We have to have our domestic workforce also globally compatible and competitive. Otherwise, we don't get foreign direct investment. Otherwise, we don't get new industries coming into the country. We don't find new opportunities. For this, we have to make our people more compatibly, equally skilled. This is one area I would say our education system, higher education system, vocational education system, as well as starting from primary education to lifelong learning, I would say, adult education, informal, non-formal education, all educational sectors need to have a kind of critical transformation to map our skill development or their competency development map with global skills. We have to identify comparable skills worldwide and make them. Actually, would you agree with me if I say, without having English at all levels, what if we make all students sitting for IELTS?
So yeah, it's like imaginable, unimaginable.
That is the globalization. That is the global thinking, right? Without we trying out to take the change, as I mentioned earlier. If we cannot lead the change, we have to take the change in that phase itself without lagging behind. So I'm not advocating to have a kind of international examination in local countries, but there are ways. That is where innovation should come. That is where young persons can bring in new ways to solve these problems.
Yeah, that actually very fruitful aspects, that ideas you share with us. So I believe with this we can come up to end of this discussion, Mr. Erandika. So we had a fruitful discussion beyond promoting youth entrepreneurship. That's beyond that as well. I hope our audience also could learn a lot from our discussion today. So thank you very much, Mr. Erandika, and thank you very much for our audience. Also, I would like to remind our audience to follow us on all our social media platforms and stay updated with more chat like this and also the works that we do. Also, if you would like to support Advocata, visit us on support.advocata.org. So again, thank you very much and have a nice day.
If you are interested in seeing more content like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow Advocata on all social media platforms to never miss out on our latest content. Consider supporting Advocata by becoming an individual subscriber. Gain access to our weekday media monitoring of economic news, exclusive Advocata events, and more. To learn more, visit us at support.advocata.org.